Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed your first day of e-learning yesterday. Maggie's joining me again for our read aloud. It was super fun sitting at home and seeing all your science responses and how you've been thinking, and I hope that it was enjoyable for you and many of us figured out who our suspect was who stole the pot of gold. So just keep working hard. You're doing great. Send us questions. Ask it on Google Classroom if you think it'll help everyone, or email us. Let us know. And always bonuses available if you make a fun video or if you get creative and do something with all the time that you have. Send it our way. We would love to see what you guys are doing. So I will get started and read aloud, picking up where we left off yesterday. Dash had just left Mr. Grizzin from cleaning up the moon dust, and he was heading to the rec room to see Roddy. And all we know about Roddy is that it's Dr. Marquez's son, and he's about the same age as Dash. Like his father had told me, Roddy, Marquez was in the rec room. This wasn't much of a surprise. Roddy was almost always in the rec room. That's where the best holographic interfaces are. As usual, Roddy was seated on an inflated cube playing a virtual reality game. His eyes were covered by thick black hollow goggles, and his hands were sheathed in senso gloves. Either he hadn't heard that Nina had ordered everyone to stay off the comm link, or, more likely, he decided to ignore her. Roddy was my best friend at NBA, although that really didn't mean much. He was the only other kid my age on the moon. Back on Earth, we probably wouldn't have been friends at all. Roddy's a decent guy, but our interests are very different. He's what you call a VR at my old school, short for a virtual resident, a kid who spends nearly all his time in the computer-generated world. I've never spent much time in virtual reality myself. We didn't even have a holographic interface at our house. Meanwhile, Roddy logged more than 10 hours a day online before he came to the moon. For that reason, he doesn't hate NBA nearly as much as I do. His life here is almost exactly the same as it was back on Earth. He spends as much time as possible jacked in and never goes outdoors. Roddy was so fixated on his game he had no idea I'd entered the room. He was jerking about wildly, arms extended, index fingers twitching like worms on a fishhook. That meant he was probably playing a war game, blasting away with virtual guns. I tapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, Roddy, how are you doing?" "I'm in the middle of a raid here," he said curtly. "Jack in if you want to talk." I sighed. This is one of the problems with VRs. They find talking in the virtual world more comfortable than doing it face to face. Still, I didn't feel like waiting around for Roddy to finish his game. Knowing him, that could have taken days. There were plenty of hollow goggles and senso gloves stored on a rack on the wall. I slipped some on, sat on the inflated cube beside Roddy, and jacked into his interface. With a whoosh, the dull gray walls of the rec room vanished, and I suddenly found myself in one of the most startling, beautiful landscapes I'd ever seen. I was standing in a meadow full of wildflowers by a pristine, blindingly blue lake. A forest on one side and snow-capped mountains on the other. 6 separate waterfalls spilled into the lake, each more breathtaking than the last. Roddy had no doubt combed through thousands of potential earthscapes to find one this stunning, and then selected to wage a war in. His enemies were some sort of gelatinous pink alien creature. Although they all had guns, they didn't appear very menacing. Roddy had probably set the game controls to a beginner level, preferring easy victory to stiff competition. The aliens had stubby little flippers instead of hands, which meant they could barely even hold their weapons, let alone fire it. Meanwhile, Roddy was blowing them away with ease. Each time he hit one, it burst into a shower of pink goo, like someone had just detonated a bowl of strawberry jello. Roddy had heavily modified his avatar as well. while the actual Roddy is flabby, uncoordinated, and not particularly handsome. Virtual Roddy was built like an Olympic decathlete, with movie star looks and bulging muscles. This was common for VRs. Some other avatars were fighting alongside Roddy, representing people back on Earth who were also playing. The men all appeared equally Olympian, while all the women looked like professional swimsuit models. I materialized right in the thick of things, at Roddy's side. Since I'd never bothered to modify my avatar, it looked exactly like me. In real life, I'm 3 inches taller than Roddy. Here, I looked like a dwarf beside him. His avatar's biceps were bigger than my head. My gun, some kind of bizarre machine gun bazooka combo, was half the size that I was. I didn't have a clue how to fire it, but then I didn't have any desire to play pretend war anyhow. "What are we fighting here?" I asked. "Angry pudding?" Roddy frowned. "Don't be fooled by the appearance of the Gogolax," he warned. "What they lack in agility, they make up for in cunning and guile. Plus, one bite from them makes your brain dissolve into sludge." With that, he blasted 3 to smithereens. Their defense didn't seem particularly cunning to me. After the first got blown away, the other 2 simply froze and gibbered in terror, allowing Roddy to pick them off effortlessly. "We're not supposed to be using the comlinks," I warned. "Don't tell me you bought that 'we have to leave them open for emergencies' garbage. Want to know what the real story is?" Before I could answer, Roddy told me anyhow. Roddy is prone to rants. He's a smart kid. Unfortunately, he likes everyone else to know how smart he is. "NASA is freaking out about Holtz kicking the bucket. They told everyone back on Earth that this place is safe as can be, and suddenly our doctor's dead on the surface of the moon. The media will go nuts with that story, so NASA is trying to control it. That's why they want us off the links. They don't want us blabbing the truth to our friends before they can put out a press release with a nice, sanitized version of what happened. They'll say Holtz croaked because of a heart attack or something, not because he went out on the surface solo like a moron." I frowned, annoyed at how Roddy was talking about Dr. Holtz, then glanced at the avatars of the other players blasting Gogolax close by. "You're saying all this on an open link. Any one of these people could be listening." "They're not paying attention to us, and they don't have any idea what our real identities are. For all they know, we're 2 yahoos from Podunk." "Still, we should watch what we say if you're right." "Of course I'm right. And if we spill the beans, Nina will want our heads." "I'm not forcing you to stay on here. If you're so worried about breaking the rules, why'd you ever jack in?" "Your father said I should come check on you." Roddy laughed spitefully. "Of course he did. Rather than come check on me himself." He spun around and blasted 4 more aliens into oblivion. "Tell him I'm totally fine." "You sure?" I asked. I tried to pick my words carefully, wary of saying anything classified. Thankfully, the other players all appeared distracted with blasting the enemy into pink smithereens. "You're not upset about Dr. Holtz?" Roddy's avatar shrugged, unmoved, which meant that real Roddy had just done the same thing. "I didn't really know him all that well." I stared at Roddy, trying to read his expression, but in the virtual world, this was almost impossible. The avatars don't mimic the subtle movements of their players' faces. Instead, everyone always looks like they're posing for a magazine cover. I had no idea if Roddy was telling me the truth or not. "Well, I'm upset," I said. "I think the whole thing is kind of weird." Roddy laid down a carpet of gunfire and took out a dozen Gogolax in one sweep. "Why's that?" I decided not to repeat the story of overhearing Dr. Holtz's conversation the night before his death. Knowing Roddy, he'd be far more interested in my breaking the space toilet. And he'd never let me hear the end of it. Instead, I brought up something else that had occurred to me. Living up here was Dr. Holtz's dream come true, I said. He worked his whole life to be on this mission, and then, only 6 months in, he does a solo outside without authorization? I can't believe I can't believe he'd take a risk like that. Roddy shrugged again. He was kind of old. Maybe he was losing his mind. My great-grandpa's nuttier than a granola bar. He wanders away from home all the time. Once they found him at the zoo in his pajamas. Maybe Holtz was losing it too. I shook my head. No way. NASA screened all of us for any kind of mental issues, especially Dr. Holtz. They wouldn't have sent him up here if they figured he was getting senile. No Gogolax had attacked for a while. They appeared to have retreated. Roddy's avatar scanned the horizon carefully anyhow. Maybe Holtz developed something while he was here. Some kind of space madness. Space madness? I repeated, failing to hide my skepticism. Yeah, Roddy said. Like where you go bonkers from being cooped up here for too long. I could imagine me getting that, I said, but not Dr. Holtz. On your left, Roddy screamed. I spun around to find a horde of gelatinous aliens mounting a sneak attack. They hadn't retreated. They'd flanked us. I whipped my gun toward them and blasted away. However, since I wasn't very adept at shooter games, I missed most of them and took out 2 of my fellow players by accident. They both stared at me as they winked out of existence. Smooth move. The Gogolax closed the gap on me with surprising speed for creatures made out of instant dessert. Apparently they were faster, and craftier, than I'd realized. The closest one leaped at me, opening its mouth wide enough to swallow me whole. Right before I could be plunged into its digestive tract, however, Roddy blew it away. Then he obliterated the rest, whooping with delight as he blasted them to bits. I even managed to get one myself. All around us the aliens burst apart, coating us with droplets of pink goo. The moment Roddy vaporized the last one, a heavenly chorus swelled. Words appeared in the crystal sky over the mountains. Level 1 cleared. Prepare for level 2. You're going to have to be way better to survive the next round, Roddy warned me. I don't think Dr. Holtz had space madness, I told him. If he did, your dad would have noticed, right? Maybe my dad did. He wouldn't have told us. He would have told Nina, and she would have probably kept it quieter than a Bazonkian snork. A what? A Bazonkian snork, Roddy repeated curtly as though they were something everyone had heard of before. An alien species from the Andromeda Galaxy, renowned for not making any sound at all. Haven't you ever played Warp War? No. Really? Well, point is, if the word got out that Holtz, the guy who's supposed to be the world expert on human health in space, had gone psycho up here, it'd be an even bigger story than him dying. A massive black eye for the whole space program. I mean, the only reason they let all us kids come up here was because Holtz said it was safe. And suddenly he turns out to be loony? Before you know it, Congress will want to shut this place down. I had to admit, that was a pretty good argument. While the next level of the game loaded, I thought back to all the times I'd seen Dr. Holtz recently. He'd seemed perfectly fine to me. In fact, the night in the bathroom before he died, he sounded sane as could be. Although he had laughed pretty manically while walking out. Had that been craziness? Or had he just been really excited? The landscape around me suddenly vanished and a new one appeared. Now I found myself standing next to Roddy inside the Sistine Chapel. Words flashed across Michelangelo's famous painting on the ceiling. Prepare for invasion. I turned to Roddy stunned. We're fighting aliens inside the Vatican? Yeah, he said with a grin. Malicious freaks. Flesh-eating slugs from Neptune. This is gonna be awesome. The slurping sound of something large and viscous came from the galleries ahead. 3 eyeballs on a turquoise stalks poked around the corner, then narrowed angrily upon spotting us. Even though the enemy was fake, I felt a very real wave of fear. My fingers tensed on the virtual triggers. Before the attack could come, however, the image froze. I thought it was a glitch at first, the whole game locking up, but then noticed that Roddy was still moving beside me. "What the?" he asked. "Dashiell and Rodrigo!" Nina's voice boomed throughout the chapel, echoing off the walls. "I thought I'd made it clear that all comlinks were to remain open." Roddy gulped, far more frightened by Nina than by the entire army of flesh-eating freaks. "I didn't hear about that," he lied. "Sorry, logging off now." His avatar vanished a second later. "Logging off," I echoed. "Wait 1 second, Dashiell," Nina told me. "I want you to come see me right now." "Where?" "In my quarters. Don't dilly-dally. This is urgent." "Okay," I said, then logged out of the game. The Sistine Chapel vanished, and all I could see was black. I pried the holo goggles off my face and blinked in the fluorescent light of the rec room. I always find switching from virtual world to the real one a little disorienting. The virtual world is so overstimulating that sometimes real life feels strangely unnatural afterward. VRs refer to this adjustment as the letdown. Roddy was still sitting on the cube next to me, frowning at his goggles. "That's just great," he muttered. "What are we supposed to do now?" "I have some books you could borrow." "Books?" Roddy snorted with disgust. "Big whoop." I started for the door. "Where are you going?" Roddy asked. "Nina wants to see me." "Ooh," Roddy taunted. "You're in trouble. What'd you do wrong?" "Nothing," I said. "Come on," Roddy told me. "Holtz just bit the big one. It's a major crisis, and Nina wants to see you smack in the middle of it. She's not inviting you over for tea. You're definitely up a creek." "I'm not," I said, though the truth was I didn't believe that myself. As I headed out the door, I had the disturbing feeling that Roddy was right. I was in trouble. I just didn't know why yet. I wonder what he could be in trouble for. Excerpt from the official Residence Guide to Moonbase Alpha. Government. According to the International Lunar Treaty of 2036, no country from Earth may stake a territorial claim to any part of the moon. Thus, the moon has no official government. Instead, all lunarnauts are technically residents of their sovereign nation, and the laws of each base are dictated by the nations that built them. MBA is therefore governed by the laws of the United States of America. The system for governing MBA was modeled after the successful system at McMurdo Station, the American scientific outpost in Antarctica. The Moon Base Commander, or MBC, serves as the de facto mayor, handling all issues to the best of his or her ability. The MBC's decisions should be regarded as the final say in all conflicts and disputes. In the unlikely event that there is an issue, in the unlikely event that an issue arises that is beyond the capacity of the MBC, then it can be appealed to the city government of Houston, Texas, home of NASA Lunar Command at the Johnson Space Center. It should be stated, however, that the residents of MBA have all been carefully selected for friendliness and compatibility, and thus there ought to be a minimum of conflict, if there are even any conflicts at all. So Nina is our moon base commander, our MBC. So we kind of just got a little insight as to what her role really is. All right, that's it for today's Read Aloud. Check back tomorrow for a video. keep reading. That was chapter 3. Tomorrow we'll read chapter 4. Send us some videos, questions, things you're doing, what you're making. Maggie's been sleeping a lot. E-learning stresses her out. All right, guys. Be good. Stay healthy. See you soon.